Sometimes we come across stories so strange that we can't help but wonder, did this really happen? Or was it just someone's imagination? I was scrolling through social media one day when I came across an old post. Someone had written that he spent his childhood in the Willow Creek Apartments, an old building in a cold, rainy city in Washington state. He wrote that during the years he lived there, things happened that couldn't be explained. At first I thought, it's probably an exaggeration, but the more I read, the deeper the story sank into my mind. The story went something like this. A mother and her young son moved to a new city, trying to start their lives over. Their budget was tight, so they chose an inexpensive place, the Willow Creek Apartments, an old building that was once part of a government complex. From the outside it looked fine, but inside there was an unsettling silence that seemed to breathe through the walls. The elevator was old. It always made a faint clicking sound before the door closed, as if a small machine was struggling in midair. The hallways were long, the fluorescent lights flickered constantly, and the walls were stained with moisture, as if no one had cleaned them in years. The boy wrote that the first few days were fine. His mother smiled, cooked meals, and he went to school. But slowly, things began to change. His mother started getting angry over the smallest things, slamming plates down, shouting for no reason. At first, he thought it was stress, a new city, a new life. Then one night, around 2 a.m., he heard something: footsteps. Soft, bare footsteps, right inside the room. He thought maybe it was someone in the apartment above, but the sound was coming from inside their living room. The boy got out of bed, took his flashlight, and slowly walked toward the corner of the drawing room. The light moved across the sofa, down to the floor, and then he saw it, a shadow gliding across the wall, moving straight into the kitchen. He didn't scream, he just froze. He wrote, "It felt like every part of my body had turned to ice." The next morning, his mother said, "You must have had a bad dream." But her face looked tense, with dark circles under her eyes, like she hadn't slept all night. As nights passed, the atmosphere in the house grew stranger. The TV would flicker on its own. Soft tapping sounds came from the kitchen door. And the most disturbing thing, 2:37 a.m. every night, the same time. When the clock hit 2:37, the air would change. A cold wave would sweep through the room, and the walls would creak slightly. His mother said, "It's an old building, the wood is settling," but the boy knew this wasn't wood. It was something else. Then one day, he saw his mother in the kitchen, standing very close to the wall, completely still. A glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor, but she didn't react. He wrote, "It looked like she was talking to someone invisible." He invited his friend over. Maybe he was just imagining things. That night, the two sat on the bed playing with toys when suddenly, everything stopped. The air, the sound, everything. And from the corner of the wall, a dark shadow passed, thick and black, shaped like a person. The boy asked, "Did you see that?" His friend whispered, "It went into the wall." They both screamed, and his mother rushed in. The lights came on, and the wall was perfectly clean, no marks, no cracks. But cold air was seeping out from that corner, as if there was an empty space behind the wall. The next morning, the mother called an old friend who was a spiritual healer. She sprinkled water, recited some verses, and said, "The air here doesn't rest, it keeps moving. Some things here chose to stay quiet." Things were calm for a few days, but then it happened again, 2:37. The TV flickered, footsteps echoed, and a faint shadow passed beneath the door. The boy wrote, "I asked my mother, are we safe here? She only said, just keep praying." And then came the night that changed everything. He wrote, "I couldn't sleep, the air was freezing. Then I heard someone whispering from my mother's room, and it wasn't her voice." That's where the writing ended. At the bottom of the post, it only said, "The rest, I don't talk about anymore." The story completely changed after that night. The person wrote, "The day I heard the third voice, I realized this apartment wasn't just a place to live, it was home to something else." That night, the air was filled with a strange kind of silence. He could hear faint murmurs coming from his mother's room, but it wasn't her voice talking. The tone was soft, but there was an ache in it, as if an old memory itself was speaking to someone. He slowly walked toward the door and peeked inside. The room was dark, only a faint streetlight glow slipping through the window. In that dim light, beside his mother, stood a shadow, right in the corner behind the wardrobe where the darkness was deepest. He wrote, "I saw my mother talking to someone, but there was no one there." Then she said only this, "You still haven't found peace, have you?" He wanted to scream, but no sound came out. When his mother looked at him, her eyes were completely blank, as if she wasn't conscious, trapped in some kind of trance. The next morning, his mother behaved completely normal. She made breakfast, talked as usual, but there was exhaustion on her face. The boy stayed quiet. He wrote, "I thought if I said something, she'd think I was lying, but I knew that voice was real." Night after night, the atmosphere of the house began to change. First footsteps, then whispers, and now something more. The lights would turn off by themselves. A soft click could be heard near the fridge, and when he looked in the mirror, he sometimes saw movement behind him. At first, he thought it was his imagination, but now something happened every day. One day, he heard his mother fall in the bathroom. He ran to her. She was lying on the floor with a small cut on her head. She said, "I slipped." But the bathroom floor was completely dry. Only in one corner was there a small puddle of water, and in that water, a faint black mark, like a barefoot print. He wrote, "That's when I realized someone else lives in this apartment with us." After that, his mother decided to perform a cleansing. There was a local woman known for spiritual work. She offered to help. She came, burned some herbs, and began slow chanting through the building's hallways. When she entered their flat, she said only this, "The air here never stops moving. Some old souls have made this their home." Then she placed an old steel key on their dining table and said, "Keep this here. When you feel the air shift, don't move the key." For 2 days after that, everything was quiet. No footsteps, no sounds. Even his mother seemed normal again. But then the third night, 2:37 a.m. When the clock ticked, the air changed again. The curtains moved, and a cold wave swept straight toward his bed. He opened his eyes, grabbed his flashlight, and saw the steel key moving on its own. Slowly, as if being pushed by an invisible finger. He wrote, "I thought I was losing my mind. I shut my eyes, but then I heard it." A voice, dry and raspy, whispered, "Why are you here?" The voice came from right under the bed. He shone the flashlight beneath. But nothing was there. Only a thin layer of moisture on the floor and a faint black smudge. The next morning, his mother said, "That's it, we're not staying here anymore." They started packing. But when he opened the wardrobe, there was a small wooden box inside, one they'd never seen before. On it carved words, "Willow, 1974. He wrote, "I didn't open the box. I felt like something inside it was breathing." That night when they were ready to move out, it was the same time again, 2:37 a.m. The lights went out. The TV began to flicker, and the steel key fell off the table with a sharp clang. His mother screamed, "Don't move." And when he looked at her, there was a shadow standing behind her. The same one he had seen before in the kitchen corner. Only this time it was clearer, closer, and alive. After that, the post ended. It only said one final line. That was the night everything changed. After that, Willow Creek was never the same. After that night, life completely changed. He wrote, I realized we weren't safe there, but what I couldn't understand was, even if we left, would that thing really stay behind? His mother had finished packing, but there was a strange resistance in the air. Whenever they went near the front door, the air would turn colder, as if an invisible wall stood in their way. And the weight of that box, Willow 1974, kept increasing. When he picked it up, it felt like something inside was moving. He told his mother, let's just leave this box here. She only said, no, son, it's not ours, but leaving it here might be even more dangerous. That night, neither of them could sleep. There was a strange warmth in the air, but the temperature inside kept dropping. The thermometer showed 12 degrees C, while outside it was 28 degrees C. Then they heard footsteps in the building's hallway. First slow, then faster. And then a knock. Once, twice, and after a long pause, a third knock. The mother picked up a flashlight and went to the door. She looked through the peephole, but no one was there. Only the hallway lights flickered weakly. That moment was so silent that even the ticking of the clock sounded unnatural. Then she saw it. Right up against the peephole was an eye. A dead white eye staring straight back inside. She screamed and locked the door from the inside. He wrote, I saw it. There was a greasy fingerprint on the peephole glass, like someone had touched it from the inside. They both sat in the corner, the box placed between them. A faint tap-tap sound came from inside it. With trembling hands, the mother whispered, maybe there's something in it, something that wants to get out. He wrote, I told her not to open it, but she said some things have to be faced. They opened the box. Inside was a small black and white photograph showing an old version of the building. But in one corner of the photo, there was something, a shadowy figure. Alongside it was an old diary labeled Property of LM, 1974. The mother began reading the diary. The first page said, we laid the foundation here for the first time. The ground was soft, but at night we heard sounds. Someone said this place was never empty. The next page read, during construction, we found an old tunnel underneath. Names were carved into the stone walls, all marked with crosses. On the final page, there was only one line. If you hear the key move, it means they found you. As soon as she read that line, the steel key on the dining table began to move on its own. Once, twice, then it slowly slid to the edge and fell off. Where it hit the floor, a small crack appeared. From that crack, faint black smoke began to seep out. It spread through the air, and the room's temperature dropped even lower. Then they heard it again, the same voice that once came from under the bed. Only now it was clearer. Closer. You shouldn't have opened it. The TV started flickering. Between the static, an old female voice was heard, like a tape recording from the 1970s. And on that tape, the same apartment appeared. But this time, there were people standing everywhere, their faces completely blurred. The mother grabbed the remote and turned the TV off. But it turned back on by itself. Now the screen showed their own living room. From an angle, as if someone was recording them. They both appeared on screen, the boy and his mother. And behind them stood a tall, shadowy figure. He wrote, I smashed the TV, but the shadow still moved. I could see its reflection in the window. Then all the lights in the building went out at once. For a second, there was absolute darkness. Then from the hallway came a heavy metallic sound, like an ancient door slamming shut. His mother said, Son, go check from the window if anyone's outside. He slowly walked to the window, and what he saw changed everything. In the courtyard of the building stood people. Dozens of them, all dressed in black and white, completely motionless. And in each of their hands was a rusted key. Their faces were blurred, but their eyes were all turned upward, staring directly at his window. His mother closed the curtains and held him tightly. He wrote. At that moment, I thought we might die. But when I looked at my mother's face, I realized something else. She was feeling something inside her, as if something was speaking through her. Then she whispered softly, "They've called me." And that was it. The post ended with one final line. That was the last night I saw her as herself. After that day, everything started to feel strange. The smile that once lived on my mother's face had completely vanished. She was always lost in thought, as if someone had taken all the light out of her. When I came back from school, she would either be standing on the balcony or in the corner of the kitchen, just staring straight ahead. I still remember it was December. Every balcony in Willow Creek apartment was covered with frost. Inside the building, the cold was so intense it felt like the walls were breathing instead of the people. The elevator often stopped working, and whenever it did work, on the mirror inside, a message appeared. "Go back." At first, I thought it was just a prank, but every day the writing looked fresh, as if it had just been written. After a few days, I couldn't tell what was stranger, my mother's silence or the building itself. At night, when everyone else slept, I always heard sounds coming from below. Sometimes footsteps, sometimes a faint humming, almost like a ghostly lullaby. One night, I decided to find out. I took my flashlight and went down to the basement. The air there was so cold I could see my breath turn into mist. On the wall, something was written. "They never left." Below that line were handprints, some small, some large, as if people had tried to claw their way out from inside the wall. Suddenly, a light flickered behind me. I raised the flashlight and saw it. An old wooden door I had never noticed before. It had a small metal keyhole. And in that moment, one face came to my mind, my mother. She had given me that same key the day she disappeared. With trembling hands, I took out the key and slid it into the lock. After a bit of resistance, the door slowly opened. A sharp gust of old air rushed out. A smell mixed of dust and burnt smoke. Inside was a faint blue light. And in the corner, an old rocking chair. Someone was sitting in it. I lifted my flashlight and saw a woman in a white dress, her face blank, eyes wide open but lifeless, and in her hand the same key I was holding. She whispered softly, "It's time." I stepped back, but the door slammed shut behind me. I thought I was dreaming. Then a cold whisper brushed against my ear. "She called you, now you stay." I screamed, but no one heard. The lights began to flicker violently. The chair started moving on its own. From every corner came a mix of sounds. Children's laughter, crying footsteps, and a faint humming of a woman weeping. Then words began to appear on the walls. 1974. Fire. We burned here. At that moment, I remembered the news archive. How it once said that Willow Creek Apartments was rebuilt over an old housing complex, where a mysterious fire had broken out. 23 people had died, but their bodies were never fully recovered. The place was rebuilt, but the foundations remained the same. And deep inside that foundation was the very room I was standing in. Suddenly, the air grew heavier. A low humming filled my ears, like a rising frequency. Then a small shadow moved past me, a child who stared at me for a few seconds and vanished into the darkness. Behind him appeared the silhouette of a woman, the same shape, the same posture, like my mother. I froze. She came closer and said only one line. "This place never lets go." The lights blinked and went out. I shut my eyes, and the next moment, I was in my bed. The room was empty. Only a small key lay on the table, and beneath it a note. "The door is open now." The next morning, I left the building and never went back. But the strange thing was, when I reached another city, that same key was inside my suitcase. I thought maybe it was just coincidence. I threw it into a river. But a few days later, when I went to my office, the key was lying in my drawer again. And from that day until now, whenever I move into a new apartment, I wake up the next morning to find that same key on my table. A little rusted, but exactly the same. As if someone keeps whispering, "You open the door, now it won't close." Some people say it's all imagination. Some say curses don't exist. But when the air freezes in a warm room, and an old key moves on its own, every theory fails. I'm ending this story here. But if you ever find yourself in an old building and hear faint knocking beneath the floor, or see a pale figure standing on the balcony, remember this: some doors don't just open, they pull you in.